Hey there, David. Hi, John.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Morning.
Good morning. Just going to wait a couple minutes and see who else shows up, okay?
Sure.
Just so you know, this is going to be recorded, and as long as there is more than one student with me, I can post it as a link for the other students to see. So keep that in mind. If you bring up anything personal, you probably don't want your classmates all to know about it.
Or tell where I hid the crown jewels.
There you go. See, there's some very important information out there you got to watch out for.
Yeah.
All right, and this is another note. I'm just going to leave that up as text for a few minutes while we wait, and then we will get started. Try and organize stuff a little bit here. Yeah. I usually start at 12:02 or 2 minutes after in case people are having trouble getting in. So one more minute. Alrighty, that's as long as I wait. Other people could join us if they wish, though. Alrighty, so you guys doing good?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. Now, is this Dave I'm talking to?
Yes.
And John, are you still there?
I am. I've been on mute because my dogs are barking.
Oh, that's okay. I have a dog laying right next to me. He's quiet at the moment, but no worries.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got plumbers doing stuff in the apartment next to me, so it's might be kind of loud on my end too.
That's okay. It's not a problem. If you guys have a question, just chime in, ask me to repeat stuff, whatever you guys need. Okay, so this is basically, it's not really an introduction to Adobe Illustrator, but usually when you all start with Adobe Illustrator, it's a little overwhelming, let us say, and some guidance into the layout and what you're looking at is helpful. So do you guys want to ask me questions, or would you rather me just kind of dive in and start showing you things, or how would you like to handle it?
I'm fine with just diving in.
Okay. John, did you have any specific questions you want me to cover?
No, nothing specific. I'm just looking to improve overall, so I'm ready to dive right into.
Okay. Are you guys both brand new to Adobe Illustrator?
I am.
I've dabbled in it slightly, but don't really have. I would still call myself a beginner.
Okay. All right. No problem. All right. So when you guys first open up Adobe Illustrator, you can ignore this part down here. You guys can both see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So you ignore this at the bottom. I can show you some stuff in Brightspace if we need to as well. So this is just a quick note. We're limited to 40 minutes, but I will set up another meeting immediately after and email you the link if we're going to continue. Okay. So just FYI on that. Okay. When you guys first enter Adobe Illustrator, it probably looks something like this. Okay. You may have one single toolbar over here instead of two. You may have some other windows open. You can always control your windows by clicking on any one of these that you want open. Okay, there's a couple that I like having open on a regular basis. That opened way down in the corner. I know why. I'm going to go ahead and reset my workspace to my standards. There we go. So this is usually what I have open. And what I have up here are the tools for the pen tool. And any one of these little tools that you see this tiny little triangle in the bottom corner, it means there are other tools underneath it. So if you just click and hold, you'll see the other tools that are underneath that one. And if you go all the way over to the right, you can tear that off as a mini toolbar. And that's what I've done here with the pen tools. I do that with the pen tools because I use pen tool a lot. So I like having that one pretty easily accessible. Okay, but you do have subtools under almost all of these. And you will not need all of these tools by any stretch of the imagination. There are some in here that I haven't used, and I've been using Adobe Illustrator for, 17 years. And there are still tools in here I've never touched because I just don't need them. So don't feel like you have to learn every single tool. You really, really don't. Okay, that's why we're only expecting you guys to learn the very, very basics of this stuff so that it can give you a starting point for your future learning if you do need to use it a lot, or at least give you a way of talking to other designers with the same language and the same basic knowledge that they have. Okay, so we're not expecting you guys to become designers in a single term or master 3 different software in a single term or anything like that. That's not what this class is about. This class is about getting your feet wet, and it's about learning the basic terminology and the basic tools that designers around you might be using. Okay, and it gives you a little starter place if you choose to continue with design. Does that make sense? Alrighty, let's go ahead. So I usually keep my Navigator, my info windows open. Navigator allows me, if you watch over there, to move around my screen in a couple different ways. I especially like Navigator because it allows me to zoom in and out really easily. So I like keeping Navigator open. Info allows you to select anything and see that information here. So I use that one quite a bit too. I like keeping Transform, Align, and Pathfinder under, and I'll show you guys some of those a little bit later. Over here, I have a couple different tabs open. I stack them: swatches, stroke, brushes, and color guide. I always have layers and artboards open because I use those extensively as well. And I like keeping my character. This is basically my text tool, and these are the subtext tools. So I keep those open too. Once you have certain things open that you like, and again, you can choose additional ones that you open and close here. If there's things that you're using a lot, you can just open them, like graphic styles, for instance. It will open up. Wow, we're running slow today. It'll open up additional windows. You can also click on this double arrow here, and it will simply close it down to this sidebar over here. But once you have your page set up the way you more or less like it, you can go into Window, Workspace, New Workspace, and you can simply label it with whatever it is you want to label it. Okay, these are my 2 standard layouts that I use a lot. So I've just saved those, and I generally work in this one, okay, under my logo, because that's what I do more of than anything else. And I've just kind of gotten used to the layout there, so it's easier for me to work with. All right. When you guys are looking at your screen, this white box here is what's called your artboard. And if you click on your artboard window, you'll see I have a single artboard. I can add an additional artboard. It's almost like an additional page. If you're doing like a 2-page layout or something, you might want to add an additional layout or additional artboard. And now you have 2 identical artboards. Okay, now this is something which you might prefer to do in InDesign if you master InDesign or get kind of the basics down. If I'm doing a very simple 2-page layout, I will generally still use Illustrator simply because I'm more comfortable with Illustrator. If I'm doing a multi-page layout where I really need to have a template and there's background information that I need to have consistent on every page, that's when I move over to InDesign because it allows me to do that much more easily. So simple things I keep over to Illustrator, more complicated layouts, I move to InDesign. Okay, I'm going to go through layers with you guys as well. This is just a text box, and any object that you create, you can move by using your regular selection tool. And you do have 2 different selection tools. This is your regular selection tool, and this is what's called your direct selection tool. And I'll explain the difference between those in just a moment. Okay, so for right now, I'm going to use regular selection. I can move my object around. My object right now happens to be text, but it could be a box just as easily. Right now, I'm going to delete it because I don't need it. And I'm going to go through a couple of basic objects with you. And if you guys have questions or if I'm going too fast, please chime in, okay? I know you guys are both on mute, but if you have any questions, please just open up your audio and talk. It's no problem. Okay, so under your regular shape tool, you have a number of different options here. I'm going to start with a circle, or an ellipse as they call it. This is an ellipse. If I hold down my shift key, it automatically makes it into a perfect circle for me. Okay, and you can do it just by clicking and dragging out. You can also click on your screen and you can input direct dimensions if you wish. And that noise is my dog because he has a giant cone on his head. Poor dog. Okay, so I can drag these and I can stack them on top of each other. Okay, I can make these different colors if I want, but I want to show you guys a little trick, which is kind of useful for making certain types of logos, and that's using my Pathfinder tools. Pathfinder tools are what I also call the cookie cutter tools, and you'll find Pathfinder right under here. You can open it up. There are a number of different tools, and I would encourage you to play with these, but one of the most useful ones is this one here, Divide. You have to use your regular selection tool, and you have to select both of your objects. So I have a circle and I have a long rectangle. Now I'm going to come down to my Pathfinder Divide. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to ungroup my objects. And now I have a number of different objects that are all separate from each other. So I have this, I have this piece, and I have this piece. So you can see how it's a very simple way of creating a basic shape. You can put shapes inside of other shapes. And I'm going to make this yellow just to make it a little easier to see. I use copy and paste. It works in Illustrator the same as it works in the Word. Okay, so now I have two yellow shapes on top of my black shape. I'm going to select all of those again using my regular selection tool. Go down to Pathfinder, Divide. Okay, now I have separate objects, but they're all grouped together. Okay, when I say grouped, I mean if I pick up one, they all follow. Okay, so I want to ungroup these objects. I usually use my keyboard shortcuts, but you can also go to Object, Ungroup. And now I should be able to pick these up as separate objects. So now the yellow circles are still the same yellow circles, but this is now basically hollow. And that's why I call it the cookie cutter tool. Okay, so you can also go under Effect, Stylize, Drop Shadow. Now I don't usually encourage drop shadows on logos. It gets really hard for printing purposes, but I just want you guys to be able to see what it looks like. Okay, so this now has a drop shadow. Okay, this is going to be underneath it. So I have to go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, and whatever object I have selected will be brought to the front of the stack. When I say stack, I mean each individual object on this page is now a separate element or a separate object, but they're all stacked like layers of paper. So I'm going to bring this one to the front, and now it's on top of my green box. And you can kind of see the shadow there too. And again, I wouldn't recommend shadows on logos for the most part, unless you have something like this. I could perhaps see something like that working. So you have a white object on a solid color with a black shadow, but you still have to recognize that this will make printing much more expensive for your client. So I tend to avoid shadows or any kind of gradations in my logos, unless it's a single color gradation. So if you have like a yellow to white or green to white, a blue to white, whatever. Okay, so that would be a single color pass with the printing. All right. So those are just a couple of the shape tools. You do have others here. Oh, Polygon, one thing you might want to know about is that as you're clicking and dragging your shape out, you can, of course, rotate like this, but you can also use your up and down arrow keys to increase the number of sides and to decrease the number of sides all the way down to a triangle. Okay, and you'll notice, do you see these pink lines that keep popping up on my page? That has to do with a preference that I have set up for aligning. It also helps me align things with other objects. It helps me make them straight. There's a couple different ways you can approach that. One is using preferences and one is using rulers. I can show you both of those so you have an idea of what you might be seeing on your screen depending on what your setups are. Okay, but they're kind of handy that way. All right, now if you have an object, get rid. Still with your direct selection tool, you can rotate your objects. Okay, you can also resize your objects. Okay, now you need to recognize that you're going to change the aspect ratio of your shape if you just click and drag a corner. But if you hold down your shift key, it immediately keeps the same aspect ratio no matter what you do. Okay, so that shift key makes things so that the aspect ratio isn't changed. And, oh, I released it a little bit too early. And it also makes perfect circles, perfect squares, things like that. Okay. Let's see. Stars works the same way. You can play with flare. I don't really think you're going to have much of a use for it, but it's kind of fun to play with. There's a lot of things in here that are fun to play with, but you won't necessarily use it a lot for creating your logos and such. All right. Whoops. Okay, that's a flare. Sorry. But they are fun to play with. All right. Those are your basic shapes. I'm going to go ahead and add another artboard. And I do want to show you guys the pen tool. Pen tool is pretty important as well. It's one of the hardest tools to master in Adobe Illustrator, but it's also one of the most useful if you can wrap your head around it. There are pen tool cheat sheets available, and you can download one of those to help you. I used to post it as an announcement, but there's so many announcements that I already have to post for this class. I don't want to overwhelm students who aren't interested. So if you want to use the pen tool and you want to download that cheat sheet, just go to Adobe Illustrator 2020 or 2019 and put pen tool cheat sheet, and you'll get one of many options that you can open and download and print out if you want. Okay. So the difference between creating a shape using one of these tools, these give you automatic closed shapes, as you can see. The path is closed, it's a solid object. Okay, but the difference with here is that you can freehand draw a shape that has really nice smooth curves that you can adjust and you can create things. It's also a really good way of starting with a photograph and creating almost like a cartoon out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that just so you can see that method as well as how to create a basic shape at the same time. And we'll do a little bit of both so you can see. So I'm just going to go into here. Find a nice simple dog image. And that one's actually might be quite good. Something with some nice markings and just some simplicity. That's a little terrifying. I'm going to go with that first one I saw, I think. That way we don't have to worry about a lot of detail. So when you guys are doing something like this, you can just copy and paste this photograph because you're not going to be using the actual photograph. You don't have to worry about it being a legal photograph or attributing it to the original artist or anything like that, because all I'm using it for is the basic shape that I'm looking at. The tongue and the nose and the eyes and the ears. I'm just looking at the basic shape. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste. Okay, it may not let me copy and paste that particular image. We'll find out. Oh, yes, it does. Good. I'm just going to shrink that down a little bit. Move it over here. Okay, now before I start tracing some of these parts of our lovely dog here, I'm going to show you the basic usage of the pen tool. Okay, so pen tools here, as I said, it has subtools underneath it. I've just torn them off to come up with my basic pen tool menu. So when you're using the pen tool, there's a couple different ways that you can use it, or a couple different types of things that you can build with it. The first one uses corner points and straight paths. So I can just click, I can move away, I can click, I can move away, I can click, and you just continue this. I'm just moving and clicking to create my object. Now, when I get to this last point, you should see that little circle pop up. That means I'm going to be closing my shape and creating a solid object. Okay, this particular object has a red fill and it has 0 stroke or non-stroke. Now, if I want it to have a stroke, I can have it selected with my regular selection tool. I can come over to stroke and I can add a stroke to it. Okay, I can also round off that stroke to make it a little softer or a little friendlier. Okay, when you're working with like a children's organization or the animal shelter, you may want more curved edges on your objects as opposed to nice sharp points. If you're working, if you're doing a logo for an architectural firm or lawyer or a doctor, you might want something a little more precise. In that case, you would probably want to stick with nice sharp points. Okay, you can also create dash lines and stuff like that in here too, and I'll let you guys play with that. Another thing to keep in mind when you're creating a logo is not to use an edge on your objects unless you really, really are forced to. It makes it, again, it's harder to print. You'll have more issues with stacking of objects and overlapping objects and making it really recognizable. When I draw out the dog in a few minutes, you'll see how I do it a little differently to keep it easy to recognize and easy to manipulate. Okay. So what I've created here, as I said, uses corner points, and corner points create a point with 2 straight paths that come off of it. Okay, now there is another type of object that I can do, and it's a little more complex to draw. But in this case, it still uses the pen tool, but instead of just clicking and moving away, I'm going to click and drag. And as I drag, you're going to see handles pull out. And these are direction handles for your curved path, which you'll see form in just a moment. So you click and drag, then you move away, and you'll see that curve there. Then you click and drag, move away, click and drag, move away, click and drag, move away. And you just continue. You can create your kind of amoeba shape here. And again, when you get to that final point, you'll see that little circle, you click and you drag out, and it will create an object with what are called smooth points and curved paths. Okay, and if you create this and you're not happy with it, this is true for either type of object, you can always edit your points by using the direct selection tool. So on the direct selection tool, you can click on your point, you can change the angle, and you can change the steepness of that curve. Okay. You can also pick up the whole point and move it. So there's all kinds of ways that you can edit your points if you're not happy with what they look like. And when I start doing my dog here, I'll get a pretty rough kind of looking shape to what I want, and then I'll go and I'll fine tune it using these tools. Okay, so this is using still the pen tool, and it's just clicking and altering my points. Okay, so I get my paths the way that I want. Now you can also, well, okay, I'm gonna wait on that part. Okay, so this is just a shape that is created with smooth points and curved paths. And this one has corner points and straight paths. Now let's say that you have a shape that you need part smooth points and part corner points. In that case, that's when you're going to use your anchor point tool conversion, or your convert anchor point tool. It's this little upside down V. And again, it's one of the sub tools under here. Whoops, sorry, under here. Okay, so when you click on this tool, if you simply click on a smooth point, it will turn it into a corner point with 2 straight edges. Now these curve here because they're attached to 2 curve points. But if I were to alter those as well, then you can see how much it changes everything. Okay, now if you want your corner points to be smooth points, you click and you drag. Okay, and be careful it doesn't twist up on you like that. Sometimes you have to untwist it. Okay, so if it looks like that, untwist, and then you can change it. Okay, you guys with me so far? Want to chime in on your microphones there?
Yeah.
You want me to repeat parts or?
No, it's not that I need repeating. It's just it just is something I'm gonna have to just get used to.
Yeah, it's a practice thing. Remember, I've been doing this for a long time, so you do get more. It's almost like a muscle memory that you build. So I have a muscle memory for using these tools that you won't have developed quite yet. It'll take you at least a few weeks of working with the tool to get really comfortable with it. But it is one of the most useful tools in Illustrator. It just happens to be one of the harder ones to learn because it does require that muscle memory. Okay. And John, are you doing okay?
Yep. No, this is great. Definitely
Okay.
help.
Is there anything you want me to repeat so far?
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay, it's making sense.
Yep.
All righty. Okay, so now that I've created these basic shapes, I'm going to show you how to use these tools to create something like the dog. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create another artboard, and I'm going to move the dog onto that artboard. Now this is where I'm going to use a layer because I don't want to draw directly on this photograph because then it just gets it harder to separate what I'm going to be drawing with the photograph. So I'm going to go into my layer menu and I'm going to create a second layer. Okay, now this blue outline, all these objects will have blue outlines because they're all on layer 1, which is designated as a blue layer. Okay, I'm going to lock that entire blue layer. Okay, once you see the little padlock there, I can't move anything on that layer. It's all locked solid. So now I can do my drawing on layer 2. Now, just because it's easier for you all, especially to see, I'm going to change the stroke of these objects I'm going to draw to a bright blue. Not a particularly pretty color, but it'll work for this purpose. And I'm going to start by creating an ear. And I'm going to use my pen tool. And I'm going to start at the top of this ear and I'm going to work my way around, only creating the ear, nothing else, just the ear. Then I'm going to create, then I'm going to create the second ear and the basic head shape. And then I'll add the nose and all that kind of stuff. I probably won't get to all of it because I think it's going to take too much of our time away, but I just want you to see the basics of how this works, okay? I'm going to go a little bit quicker on this, again, just because we have limited time. So I want to try and get through as much of this as I can with you guys. So with my pen tool, I'm going to click and drag. Click and drag. And when you're creating these objects, you don't want to use too many points. It's tempting to try and use every single curve and to create lots and lots of points, but it'll make your shape look sloppier if you use too many points. So don't be scared to kind of abbreviate some of the shape a little bit, to simplify it, and to make it your own. You really should make it your own anyway, so no one can come after you for copyright. Okay, but that's my basic ear shape. And I'm going to do the same over on this side. Then I'm going to do a head and a nose at the very least. Again, I'm not worried too much about getting it absolutely perfect. One, it's an organic shape anyway, so I don't want perfect. And two, I don't want to have too many points confusing things. Okay, and the first time you do this, it will be a little bit tougher than what I just did. That's okay. Okay, it takes time to get, you know, your points the way you want them. Now I can go back in and I can make areas a little thinner, or I can adjust the curves or whatever it is I want. I kind of like the sharp curve there. This, I think, is an extraneous curve. I don't need that one. So I'm going to delete this point. And then I'm going to use this tool to extend that just a little bit and extend that a little bit. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to go and create the basic head shape. Yeah. I'll probably send you guys another invite in about 10 minutes. All right, so I'm going to start in the middle of his head here. And you notice I'm not going to try and overlap these shapes. I'm leaving a healthy amount of space between them. And the reason for this will be a little more obvious in a few minutes. I'm also not going to do the tongue, I don't think. So I'm going to try and approximate where the bottom of his mouth would be. I'm going to probably have to edit this a little bit. And again, this is a nice, simple, organic shape. We don't need perfect. Perfect is boring. Okay, we've got the closed shape again. Okay, that's our basic head shape. And I'm going to go ahead and do a nose because I'm going to use that Pathfinder tool from before and cut the nose out. That'll make a bit more sense in a moment. Cute little nose. Actually, I'm going to do this as two separate parts, the nose. And I do want my nose to be symmetrical, so I'm going to use another technique here. I'm just going to close up that half nose. I'm going to create the bottom of the nose. Okay. I'm going to select both of these pieces. So I'm going to click and drag out to enclose both of these pieces. And then I'm going to use another tool here called Reflect. It's another useful little tool. So I'm going to double click. It's going to ask me, do I want to reflect it vertically, horizontal, at an angle? Do I want to make a copy? Or do I simply want to move these shapes? I'm going to keep my initial shapes. I'm going to do a vertical copy. And I'm going to use my arrow key until I have those two shapes. Now, because I know I want this to be a solid shape in the end, I'm going to go ahead and overlap those. Then I'm going to select all of those. And I'm going to use this one here, which is called Unite. This simply combines two shapes or two overlapping shapes into a single shape. Okay, so now this is a perfectly symmetrical nose. It will take a little adjusting here. That's okay. I don't think they were quite overlapping actually. You know what? Hang on. I'm going to undo that. If you haven't learned undo shortcut, I don't even know where it is. Here we go. Undo. Okay, it's Control Z, Apple Z. It could be Option Z, depending on what kind of system you're working on. But find out this shortcut on your keyboard. It's like your favorite one ever. So I'm just going to undo that a sec. I'm going to move these over a little bit more because that wasn't quite overlapping. I really thought it was. Now it is for sure anyway. Okay, so again, I'm going to use my Pathfinder Unite. There we go. Now you'll see I have extra points here I'm going to have to clean up. That's okay. Zoom in. You can just delete points that you don't need like that. That might be enough, or if it's not, you can kind of adjust things. Sometimes if my points are like this so that they're two separate and I don't want it to be like that. Sometimes you do want it that way, but sometimes I'll just use the convert tool again and just pull out a nice smooth curve for myself. It's just a little easier. Same on this. Okay, it was twisted, so you just got to untwist it. Adjust that curve a little. And down here, I'm going to do a little cleanup too. Okay, so this is all just for the nose. And you'll see, as you see that pink line pop up, that's telling me that I'm straight. And again, that's under preferences. Okay, so now I have my nose. I have 2 ears and I have a face. The first thing I'm going to do is select all of those objects. So that's what, 5 different objects. And I'm going to make them solid objects. Right now they're just outlined so that I can still see the photograph behind it. I'm going to flip-flop these 2. So now they're all solid objects. Okay, now I'm going to select all of them again. And I'm going to use this tool called Exclude. And it's going to basically work as a cookie cutter. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to center that a little bit more. Okay. But once I use a cookie cutter, it's going to cut out the nose shape from the solid head shape. Before I do that, I'm going to deselect. I'm just going to move those over a little bit. Might move it down a little bit too. Let's see how that works. May have to add eyes to make it not look creepy. Sometimes you don't have to, but sometimes you do. All right, so now I have all 5 objects. I'm going to use Exclude. And now I have my dog shape. When I work with logo design, everything I do is in solid black until I make my final decisions about color. I use solid black and I use no strokes whatsoever. Pure black objects on a pure white or absent background. Okay. I'm going to also lock these together. You can use object. Okay, they actually are locked together at the moment. You can use group or ungroup if I wanted to. Because I did the transformation using Pathfinder, it grouped them together automatically. But if you want to ungroup them, you can too. Actually, I think I will lower the ears a tiny bit. I'm just going to adjust the curves a little, do some minor changes. It really is a judgment call when you get to this kind of stuff. Okay. I don't know if it needs eyes or not. We'll see. When I shrink it down, I might decide. Okay, but this gives me a basic dog look. Could use a little perfecting. Doesn't look as much like a dog as I wish. I'm not super pumped about the nose right now. I'd definitely do some editing. But at least I have a basic object to work with right now. I'm going to group that together again. I use my keyboard shortcut, but you can also go up here, group and ungroup. And now I can unlock this layer, move this, and now I have the beginning of a logo to start playing with. Now I get to move on to my text tool. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and set up another meeting for 12:42 if I can. And I'm going to email you guys the link so that we can continue with this. They're going to cut us off in 2 minutes anyway. Okay, so watch your email for the next link.